G'day and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button for more classic mini motoring. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to reach out and say a big thank you to Soundlabs Group for sponsoring this episode. They've been watching my channel for quite some time and got in touch with me not too long ago and advised me that the radio in which I was using in my car, which is a snap-on speaker, I need to throw that thing in the bin as they were going to send me an upgraded radio for my classic mini. So in this box is what we've been sent from Soundlabs Group. Now, they are a company that specializes in everything retro and classic for all makes and models. It could be a Chevy, it could be a classic Mini, it could even be a classic Holden, anything of a vintage era. They came out with a radio, and in which if you wanted to upgrade a radio and you wanted to add things like Bluetooth, an auxiliary port, and even digital radio, they do everything from head to toe. They don't just specialize in radios, but they also specialize in repairs, car audio and sound deadening. You name it, this company does it. Make sure to check out their full range on the website listed below. So, as I said, they specialize in absolutely everything for classic cars, and for Grace, we're going to give her a bit of a makeover. So like I was saying, they offer everything for classic cars, especially the classic Mini. Now, not all cars back in the 70s came out with a radio. I was fortunate enough in 1974, Grace behind me here came out with an AM radio. So we're going to be upgrading the radio inside of today to something a little bit more modern. So inside this box is a heap of stuff that Soundlabs have sent me. So let's go in and have a look, see what we've got. Now we have an aerial. They offer two different types of aerials, I believe. One's hidden, so you can run it around the windscreen, you can run it around a window, somewhere where it's out of the way, or you can just mount it directly to the glass, which I believe this is what this one does. Next thing is we have an AUX and USB port. This plugs directly into the back of the radio, and you can mount this with a little flush face mounting at the front just here. It comes with a set of instructions. Always make sure you read those, especially when you're installing something new like a radio. Now, just quickly, this was the original radio that came out in Grace in 1974. As you can see, it's got some big dials, it's got a couple of push buttons here. And the really cool thing about this is every time you push a button, the dial moves from side to side depending where you've selected the channel. Now, I've actually taken it out of the faceplate, so I'll show you guys that in a minute, but it was quite simple to remove. All I need to do was pull the two dials off here. There were two nuts holding it on. Once you've undone the nut, it then slides out from behind. Now, the good thing about Soundlabs is that they offer it as a bit of a kit, but they also offer it as a complete unit similar to the original one that came out of Grace. So they offer it in different sections in which you can piece your own together with different dials, different buttons, different faceplates, depending on what sort of application you're looking for or what sort of look you're after. Now, the cool thing is that these dials aren't just going to be fixed in one position. You can adjust them to where you need them to be. So if the dials are further apart compared to standard, if you're making a custom dash, you can modify it to suit the exact application which you're using it for. Now, the next thing is the retro radio faceplate. This is the most exciting part of the entire build because this is what replaces the original one that came out of Grace. So inside there we have a set of instructions, we have a couple of nuts, we have both of the dials in which you can adjust the application to where you need it to be, and right down the bottom we have the faceplate. Now, I opted to go with black buttons and a black faceplate. You can choose different colors depending on what application you're using. So as you can see here, this one looks very similar to the original one that came out of Grace. So it is a complete replacement and with very little to no modification required to make it work. With one simple connector behind there, it's easy enough to follow a set of instructions, connect it all up, and away you go. Now, in most states, territories, and countries around the world, they run digital radio. So in this box, we have a digital radio adapter. So this is what enables the digital radio to be compatible with the radio. So inside there, we have a couple of different things. Let's open up and let's have a look. Once again, set of instructions as well as a caution as well. So make sure you read the caution if it is applicable to. Make sure you test everything before assembling it, and if possible, reassemble it, give them a call and send it back if there's any dilemmas. We have a pretty straightforward diagram. Once again, another user manual and a set of instructions, and installation and assembly manual. Inside the box, we also have the main part of the radio. So that's going to be the part that sits behind the faceplate, and then everything else connects to here, whether it be a power lead, whether it be the USB, the AUX, or any of the speaker wires as well. It also comes with a DAB adapter, so if you're running a standard aerial, you can change it from the standard aerial fitting to the correct fitting in which it will enable it to have digital radio. We have the dials in there as well, which we'll attack shortly. We have a speaker as well, so because this has Bluetooth, I can wire this wherever I need, route the microphone, that way I can use my phone whilst driving safely. It also has a wiring harness as well that comes with a small set of instructions as to what wire goes where on the back of the terminals. These are pretty straightforward. If you've wired up radios before, you won't have a problem with it. Alright, so we've got a mounting kit of some sort as well, and we have the actual dials that are going to be going on the front of the radio, as well as a mounting plate in which we can help mount it and hold a little bit of rigidity to the back of the radio. Also comes with screws, bolts, and spacers by the look of it, as well as a couple of extra mounting brackets if needed. Alright, in the last box we have something else. I haven't yet opened this, so I'm not entirely sure what's inside here, but we're going to have a look. Ah, right. Yeah, they've actually gone above and beyond, and they've actually sent me a set of speakers. Now, the good thing about these is you can mount them underneath the dash or somewhere hidden. That way it keeps that classic retro vehicle look, but also has a good sound system at the same time. So I'm really impressed that they've gone to this extent and not only sent me the DAB top of the line model, but also they've sent me a set of speakers, because at the moment, as most of you have seen in previous episodes, I've only got one speaker in the entire car. Also comes with a set of speaker wires, so they're pretty straightforward. Once again, if you've wired up any sort of radio before, it's pretty straightforward to be able to follow them. If not, you can follow the instructions that come with the box. So this is the original radio that came inside the Mini in 1974. One of the coolest features about this is it still has the original speaker that came with it. So I'm not going to remove it, I'm just going to leave it in there and see if it works. If it doesn't, I'm going to leave it in there for the aesthetics of it all. So let's get to fitting this radio. Alright, so the first step is you need to grab the radio and you need to grab the faceplate. What we're going to be doing is grabbing the two and mounting the ribbon at the back of it. So at the back, inside here, you just got to go fishing to find the ribbon. Once you've found the ribbon, that will then directly attach to the back of the faceplate. Now you do need to note this will only go on in one direction. Once it's pushed in, you've attached it. Now what we need to do in step number 2 is attach the faceplate to the radio itself. Once you've slid in there nice and easy, there are 2 screws on either side we need to fit. Make sure as well, before you go any further, the retro sound faces upwards and that this side faces down. So in the box with a faceplate, you have a small bag, and inside that bag is another small bag. What we need to do is remove the little orange one, and then inside there are the 4 screws we need to attach the faceplate. Now for this particular application, you're going to need a set of small screwdrivers. In my case, I'm using my little Ryobi set. Alright, so it turns out these brackets are what's needed for step number 3. So these are the brackets that enable the dials to be fitted to the radio itself. So we're going to open up the packaging and then we're going to fit them to the radio. So it is worthwhile noting as well that they need to be facing like this. So the opening of the slot starts at the radio side and works its way out. Now on the side of the radio you will see 4 screw holes. There are 4 bolts that need to go in through here, and then you can adjust it to where you need it to sit depending on which side it needs to be on. Please note as well that they are coded left and right. So this one has an R denoting that it is the right hand side, and the other one has an L denoting that it is this side, which is in fact the left side. Grab 4 of your screws and attach it using a screwdriver. Now I do have my snap-on electric screwdriver in which I'm going to help close the gap a little bit, but I've got the torque setting down all the way, that way I'm not going to over tighten the screws. Repeat the same process on the opposite side. Now it is worthwhile noting as well, I've got mine fairly central, but depending on where the dials need to go, you can adjust the bracket up and down as well as back and forth. Now I did just realize that in my specific application, the width of this is actually going to exceed the size of the radio that's been supplied. So as you can see, they are 2 different sizes completely. So I'm gonna have to actually run it without these side brackets in order for it to fit inside here. But not to worry, we can mount the dials individually just here, as well as mounting the back of the radio to the inside of the faceplate. So in applications like mine, it's not necessary to mount these brackets on there simply because it mounts directly to the radio itself. On other applications, whereas when you don't have a faceplate and you're just running the radio and then you want it to be hidden behind the dash, all you need to do is work out where it needs to sit, mount these brackets, and then drill the appropriate holes to make it work. Now the next thing we need to determine is the length of this in which it comes out of the radio itself. So we obviously don't want it sticking out super far, but also we don't want it in just so far where we're not going to be able to turn the dial correctly. So we need to measure the length and then adjust it accordingly. Now inside one of the little bags, you have a heap of little washers and nuts in which we're going to use to set the depth of the dial. So like with anything, we're going to put the nut on first. We're going to wind that down. Once you've got it set to the desired length, we are then going to slide the washer onto there and then slide it in from behind at the back of the radio, all the way down through there, and then repeat the same process, putting a small washer on first, followed by a nut. Once you've set the depth on one side, make sure you tighten it either using a socket or a spanner, and then repeat the same process on the opposite side. Now on the back of the dials, you have two wires. Each of those wires need to get connected to either side of the radio in this grey connector just here. Before we go and connect them, I'm just going to make sure that it actually fits. Right, so it is quite close, so what I'm going to need to do is probably just trim one of the corners or even two of them to make it slide all the way through. Alright, so all I've done is just take off the corners using a small file, and that should enable the radio to fit straight in there. Perfect. So now all we need to do is connect up the wires on either side and then mount the radio inside the housing. So what I'm actually going to do first is mount the radio to the actual housing itself. That way it gives it some support and rigidity. Now inside the kit was this small piece of steel in which I'm just going to bend to enable me to mount it to the bottom of the radio housing and then at the back of the radio. Bend it to the desired shape and then fit it to the back of the radio. Now remember, this process might take a few attempts before you get it right. Now on the bottom of the base plate, it does have a small hole at the bottom in which I'm going to be utilising, as well as a threaded section in the middle of the back of the radio. Now in the kit is a stud with a small nut in the middle. What you want to be doing is having that offset one way or the other depending which way you need to go. In my case, I'm going to put the small end in first, tighten that up by hand, and then fit the bracket. Now ensure that before going any further, the nut and stud is tight at the back of the radio. Grab your bracket, fit it in the desired location. Now on the back of the stud, you want to make sure that you're running not only a washer, but also a nut. Now depending on the application, you may want to mount this bracket in a different manner, but in my instance, this is probably going to be the best way for me. Also ensure that the nut is tight once you've got it in the allocated position. Make sure as well that the radio is nice and square and isn't on a bit of an angle. And that is the radio mounted in the housing. Now, next thing we need to do is grab both of these wires and attach them to the side of the radio itself. They'll audibly click in, so push it until you hear it click. Now, one of the things that they offer are many different, not only faceplates, but also different dials and knobs. I've chosen to go with the same style in which it came out with. So there was a silver backing followed by a black face. So we have a couple of different options here in which we can run. I think I'm going to run it like this. It looks absolutely amazing with that chrome that's there. So what we need to do is just line up with where it needs to be. Slide it as far down as it'll go. Once it's on, grab the dial, locate the pin, and then push it on. Alright, so just off camera, one thing you guys didn't see was me just reattaching these two side brackets. I did bend them into a bit of a U shape, I guess, and attach them with a Tech screw on either side to be able to hold it in properly. The reason I had to do that was that if I didn't, every time I pushed the buttons, the radio wanted to move back and forth. So I've just reattached it. You're not going to see it, so it isn't a drama, but you shouldn't have any sort of issues like this on most applications, depending how you're mounting the radio itself. So next thing we need to look at is the wiring. So this is a pretty straightforward wiring diagram for the digital radio adapter. So we have this one here. So what we need to be doing is attaching this to the antenna on the vehicle itself. We have two wires. We have a red one and a black one. I'm sure you can guess what they're for. Red is power, black is earth. This one goes directly into the back of the radio, as well as this gold one here. So let's flip the radio around and let's have a look. So this gold one sits directly on the top of the radio just here. It can go generally in any orientation in which you can place it. This one goes directly in the back of the antenna. Slide it all the way in. Then all you need to do is run these extra wires to be able to get power on earth, followed by attaching that to the vehicle aerial. Now, because we're running an aftermarket aerial, this generally goes to the aerial on the vehicle, but in our case, we're going to be running this one. Now, this attaches with double-sided tape, so you can mount it almost anywhere on the car. You just need to make sure as well that it does have an earth point, so you do need to make sure that you earth it correctly. All right, next thing is to get both of the wiring harnesses. Now, like I was saying, on these stickers themselves, they do have a list of instructions in which they need to go. So they do need to be fitted in a correct manner, otherwise it's not going to operate correctly. So you'll find on this one, it has 5 different colors. All those need to be attached. So we have constant power, power for the antenna. So if you have a motorized antenna, ignition, which is connected to 12 volts, a ground circuit, and a blue white wire which goes to the amp turn on. So if you're running an amplifier, that'll go directly to the amp. And this set of wiring does all of the speakers in the car. So the front right, front left, right, and rear left. All right, next thing we're going to do is grab this giant connector just here. So it does have 2 different designations. There is one connector on one side and 2 pins on the other. Now, a really good way to know which wire goes where is just to simply match up the colors. So you can see this white connector here is going to go on the outer side because it has purple, gray, white, and green, which is going to be this one here. That'll connect directly to the side. Once again, make sure you audibly hear it click. Grab the other one, that's the black connector, and just double check the connector wiring. So we have a yellow, black, blue, and red. Once it's on, you can then run each of the wires. Each of the wiring harnesses have a different orientation in which they need to go. So this one here does all the power, ignition, ground, amplifier, and the antenna circuit, whereas the other wiring does all of the wiring for each of the speakers. So grab the harness and that will clip directly to the back of the radio. Also, another thing we need to do is work out which is the microphone and which is the auxiliary. In both of these instances, it is labeled quite clearly external microphone and auxiliary in. So we're going to be wiring up the microphone a little bit later, but let's get on to doing the auxiliary cable. Now, this is something you can either attach now or you can attach later, depending how easy of access you have. So in my case, it is not difficult, but it is just a little hard to be able to get it out while it's in the car. So what we're going to do is just unravel all this and then we're going to attach it that way. We've got that extra length just sitting there, and if we need to, we can connect it and then route it to where we need it to be. The good thing about this is you can route this to any position you want, even drill a hole in the dash. That way you have an external socket for not only auxiliary, but also a USB. So on the back of the radio, you want to find the 2 connectors. So one of them is for the USB. We're going to plug that directly into there. And then we're going to grab the auxiliary cable and plug it directly into there. Once again, make sure you use the correct auxiliary in socket. Now you've got all the wiring harnesses in, let's throw it inside the car. Before we do, also note that these are for the amplifier. So if you want to run an amp or a subwoofer, these are the wires in which you need to use. All right, so we are in the cockpit of grace. Next thing we're going to be doing is just dummy fitting everything to make sure that it all works and that we've done it all correctly. Now, the aerial is this one just here. As you can see, it does have an earth point on it, so you need to make sure that you earth that. I'm probably going to cut that off and extend the wiring. I'll do that off camera, that way you don't have to see me do it. But for now, I'm just going to sit it up on the dash, that way I get some sort of reception when we decide to plug it in. And the other end of this wire comes directly from the aerial itself, and that loose wire looks like it's possibly an earth, so we're going to have to earth that as well. So on the back of the radio, find the aerial socket and then connect it up. In our case, it's going to be the digital antenna adapter. And then just push it all the way in. Now the next thing we need to do is run the power and earth cables along with the speaker wires. Like I said, there is instructions on the wiring, so make sure you follow those all the way to the T before soldering anything. Loosely fit everything and then switch the ignition on to make sure that it works before reassembling it completely. That will save you putting it all back together, finding out that there's an issue, and then having to pull it all back apart again and possibly start again. Alright folks, welcome back. I've wired everything in, I've attached everything loosely. I have sat the radio back in the car, so now it's time to make sure that she fires up. So as you can see, there are just a heap of loose wires here. I'm still running stuff. I will reroute it, so don't worry guys, I will make this nice and clean. So let's switch the ignition on and see what it does. Alright, so the light for the aerial has come on. That is a bonus. Let's give it a, there we go. Terrific. So retro sound radio. Alright. Sweet.
Got my speakers going. Excellent. So now I just need to work out where I'm going to mount these. A little bit of Robbie Williams. How's that? We got it working. So that's the episode for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, and I hope you learned how to install a retro radio to your classic vehicle. Thanks again to the Soundlabs Group for sending out a radio and all the necessary equipment I need to transform Grace's audio system into something next level. I'm super excited to properly test this out and try all the features and functions. Guys, make sure to check out the list in the description below as well as their website and see what they have available to suit your classic vehicle. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you right here on another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups.